Alex is the president of the Georgia Republican Assembly. And if you haven't heard of the GRA, then I encourage you to look us up, georgiara.com, and also to speak with Alex afterwards about it. Catherine Bernard, who already got up here to speak, she is one of our national directors for Georgia, to the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. So Georgia is a chapter of that group. Alex is the president of the national group. So we're really, really glad to have him here today. He has submitted a rule to the Georgia State Convention, to the Rules Committee, and I think that this is a rule that could make a huge difference in how, in what kinds of people we have representing us in government. I know that so many of you get really frustrated sometimes. As a chair, I've had many people come up to me. Somebody who is here tonight came up to me a week ago and said, what can we do about these people that run as Republicans and do not represent our values and they do not represent our platform? Well, Alex has a solution for that, and he's going to tell you about that tonight. He brought copies of the rule that he submitted, and he also, after he explains it, he's going to take some questions on that. So thank you, Alex, for being here. He came up from DeKalb County, and we look forward to everything you have to tell us tonight.
Thank you so much, Joanna. And thank you all for being here tonight. And, talking about rules, it's not always the most exciting thing. So what I will do, though, is I want to start off just with a little bit about my history, because it really influences the reasons behind this rule. And also, you can sort of see some of the problems through this. So, in 2009, I got involved in my local GOP down in DeKalb County. I was in law school at the time. I was in Georgia State Law School. I've always been a Republican. My family raised me Republican. They were like, hey, why should we be Republican? And they were like, look, you're for individual responsibility, lower taxes, gun rights, that's pro-life, that's why you're a Republican. I'm like, all right, this all makes perfect sense. So President Obama got elected. I remember I was living at home during law school. My mom came in one day when Obama got elected, was super upset, as I'm sure all of us were, and was like, well, I should do so. Like, what can be done? I was like, well, why don't we get involved in the GOP or something? So we ended up getting involved. And I was surprised because, I'm at a GOP meeting, and one of our elected, at the time, we had Republican elected officials in DeKalb. And one of them got up and was talking about how they did some bill that I think ultimately increased spending or increased taxes. And this room of 60, 70 people in DeKalb County applauded. And I'm like, well, I'm confused. Why is there applause at more government spending and more regulation? Like, this doesn't make sense to me. But I'm like, all right, well, I'm still a Republican. I'll sit here, see what happens. 2012 rolls around. I've been involved in the party for a few years. And then, I see a lot of Tea Party people around. A lot of people who support Ron Paul. And all of a sudden, the people in the party who were talking about, well, we need new people involved, didn't want the new people involved from the Tea Party. And I was like, this is weird too. Why am I hearing one message in the public about more involvement and lower taxes and standing for principle, and then in the party meetings, now they're trying to keep people out and defend politicians that aren't keeping their promises. So this is weird to me. I run for party leadership positions starting in 2013, travel around the state, start talking to people, and then I realized that there's attempts, and I found it very odd, is that people kept trying to say that people who believed in individual rights should be opposed to people who were involved with Pat Robertson and the religious right, and they should be opposed to the Tea Party. Like, everyone should be opposed to each other. And I was very, very confused by that. I'm like, wait, why should we be afraid of each other? All these people believe in different parts of Republican principles and values, yet we're being told, oh no, that's, and the phrase I always heard was, that's not the role of the party. The only role of the party is to get Republicans elected. But if asked, how to do it, what they stand for, it's like, oh, no, we don't talk about that. And I found that to be really confusing, too. Like, wait, so we just show up to party meetings and applaud for higher taxes? I don't see how this is a growing positive strategy. So, that's going on 2013, 2015. I'm involved in the party, running for party leadership. Some of you may have seen that back then. But then in 2015, I end up becoming president of the Georgia Republican Assembly. Republican Assembly started out in California a long time ago, backing, ultimately helped get Goldwater nominated and then Reagan elected as governor in California. And that spread around the country. The Republican Assembly motto is the Republican wing of the Republican Party. Difference with the Republican Assembly versus the party is the Republican Assembly endorses candidates for party office and public office. The national group, we have a convention coming up in October to endorse somebody for president. Last time we endorsed Donald Trump at a national convention. But my personal opinion on it doesn't matter until after that convention. But the point is I became president of the Georgia chapter. We had 6 people. Republican wing of the Republican Party. The principles of the Republican Assembly are basic Republican principles. Gun rights, lower taxes, individual rights, pro-life, all of that. It's all on our website. And right now, due to Brant Frost V, the current second vice chair, who's also on the GRA board, now Georgia has a platform. Until just 2 years ago, the Georgia Republican Party had no platform. And when you proposed having a platform, and I suggested it at various points back about 10 years ago, I was told that's not the role of the party. I know, it sounds crazy, but that's the messaging that happened until, and luckily, platform got passed because there's great people on the state committee, people at the conventions making it happen. So fast forward, more people are involved, more people are wanting to see accountability for politicians because they're there to represent us. They should be doing what is in the platform. That's why we have a platform. Because why are we involved in politics? It was an even better question. Why are we Republicans? We aren't Republicans because it's a sports team. We're Republicans because the principles of the Republican Party enacted into law are best for society. But it's a weird thing when you think about it, right? So we're for lower taxes and less regulations because it employs people. It makes us all more wealthy. It brings everybody up. So when you compromise on that and you say, we're just going to raise taxes some and add some regulations, well, what happens? The Democrats go and say, well, look, things are bad, give more money away. And then the Republican politicians cave and say, well, let's do that to look good. And then they add on more tax and regulations like the Dems want, and the Democrats keep turning around and saying, well, look, things are going badly. Obviously, Republican solutions don't work, but we've never done them because the politicians keep caving. They don't enact the principles that the party believes in, that we all believe in. The same things that, my parents told me, hey, you're a Republican for lower taxes, less regulations, individual rights. So it comes down to well, what happens in this? So we endorse candidates for Republican Assembly. And when I say we, I don't mean me. It's all grassroots. It's all volunteer. We had a convention just about a month ago endorsing all the people you see on that little flyer that was handed out. The members did it. And we had a vetting committee which put out a report on all the different candidates. All of our members came together, voted on who to endorse. Our members did. It wasn't me. I was unbiased until afterwards. I'm glad with every single person on there, but it's about the people. Just like the party should be about the people. And we've endorsed people for public office. I mean, some of you are represented by Colton Moore. Yeah, he's awesome. We endorsed him last year. He's amazing. I don't know how many of you know the name Matt Gertler. He's currently Thomas Massey's chief of staff. He used to be a state rep, also amazing. These people went to the Capitol and stood for principle. And what ends up happening at the Capitol when you stand for principle is you don't get treated very well by party leadership, because when you start standing for principle, it makes the others look bad, and they say, well, you aren't falling in line, so you don't get to be on this committee, you don't get to have your bills move forward. They try to make you look bad. The same way they stripped committees from Marjorie Taylor Greene a few years ago on the national level, who also we endorsed unanimously at one of our conventions, MTG. So the point is that this is what is done to the politicians who stand up. So the question is, so why are we allowing people to run under Republican banners who betray our principles? It hurts our brand. It hurts the ability to get people involved in the party. It hurts our growth as a party. It makes it so people constantly talk about, well, I don't necessarily like voting for this Republican, but it's better than a Democrat. I mean, think of how much better it would be if everyone was excited to vote for Republicans. So we know that the people who have or are next to their name, we're excited about, and so should the public. Everyone should love these people because we know the people running are citizens just like us that are not betraying the voters. And when you think about it, now this is where we get a little bit legally, and this is why I made sure that these are handed out, copies of the rule that was proposed. So the rule is being proposed, and we're calling it the accountability rule. And it's actually two rules, but it's because the state required to be submitted with a word limit. But the question is, so we have a lot of people now involved in the party. Like a lot of new people have gotten involved, a lot of grassroots people who want to see accountability. And you look around the state, and around the state, people who were GRA members, GRA endorsed candidates, and when I say GRA, it could just be allies of us too, like people who understand that principles matter, that's why we're involved. It's not to funnel money to Delta or Home Depot or any other company, any corporate cronyism. Government doesn't exist in order to provide welfare to corporations. It exists for the people. And ultimately, a lot of people are involved now who see it about principles, not about money. And they're in leadership around the state, in party office throughout the state. So the question is now, what should the party do? Now, in some states, just so all of you know, and I only learned this in the past couple of years, California GOP, their delegates to their state convention, a lot of them are selected by politicians. If you're an elected Republican, or if you were the Republican nominee for an office, you get to select the delegates to go to the state convention. So that's a different system than Georgia. You look at Virginia's system, their GOP is a little different because their state conventions can say who the nominee is through a vote of their delegates. So, I mean, this has some benefits, but their delegates can say this is the Republican nominee for, like, governor or some other seat by a vote of the state convention. So Virginia doesn't have one. So I say that to point out that when you hear, and I've heard this in Georgia when talking about this rule, when you hear people say, well, the party can't do that. Yeah. They do. The party is different in every state, and in other states they do it. Now, the party is a private organization. The GOP, nationally, it is a private organization that happens to have, under Georgia law, it has enough votes for its candidate for governor that has automatic ballot access. Like, it gets to be on the ballot. Candidates under the Republican banner get to be, like, we get ballot access. The party itself gets ballot access. So the party can place people on the ballot. Now the question is, how is that done? Right now, if Liz Cheney or Barack Obama moved to Georgia, they could walk down to the Capitol during qualifying in whatever district they live in and sign up as a Republican and say that they want to run for a Republican state rep position or any other position. And they would be on the Republican primary ballot as a Republican. And, you know, when you think of someone like Liz Cheney, she could spend a bunch of money, end up on there. I would hope that everyone would vote against Obama, but, I mean, someone like Liz Cheney could spend a ton of money. You have other politicians who get to office who will vote for tax increases and do things that betray the brand. So what this rule change does, the accountability rule, would allow the state convention delegates, and only state convention delegates, not the state committee, not the state executive committee, not a small number of people, but the people at a state convention, those delegates, to make a motion, and that's the first line of the rule change, make a motion that specific people could not qualify as a Republican, ever, unless the party at a state convention were to repeal that. So that is the rule change. It would allow for, if you have an issue like with think of whoever you would like, but I think of people like Liz Cheney or someone like that gives the delegates the power to say that person does not get to qualify as a Republican. It doesn't select who the nominee is, like in Virginia. What it does is it makes it so that if you know, and we know by looking at these politicians, what they are doing, they can't just buy the primary. They aren't just determined by PACs anymore who gets the nomination. It's not just about money. It's about them being accountable to you. The candidates being accountable to the party.
Because as many of you have noticed, I mean, money is going elsewhere. It's not going to the party anymore. Politicians can ignore the party a lot of times. They ignore the principles. They're more interested in what lobbyists and leadership think about them than about what the citizens think. They're more interested in giving tax breaks to film industry or others that are moving Democrats to the state than they are about conservative principles, basic Republican conservative principles. So that's what the rule would do. The rule would allow the delegates to make the motions, stop someone from qualifying who would make it so the party wouldn't qualify them on the state level. And, you know, if the convention changes its mind in the future year, it could, but it gives the power to the delegates. All of you, all of us. And it would, I think, increase involvement in the party. It would just make the politicians act better. Because if they're afraid of getting removed from the ballot as being able to vote as a Republican, they're going to act a lot better. So that's the idea, and it's the rule itself is broken down into various points, but
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, say there's 3 people running for governor, or state rep, or whatever. To me, they could.
I'll repeat the question after you. Or write it down. Two mics. Sorry. Well, you start asking, and then the second mic.
My question is, if someone's running for office, and they know that there might be a motion to remove them, they could pack the convention with delegates. That's the only thing that worries me, that you could have somebody who does betray our principles. We know they do, but they pay people's way to be a delegate or to get into that convention, have the majority, and then they get on it anyway.
Right, no, that's a good concern. So, like, we've thought about that. So, and I've noticed this too with the Republican Assembly. So, when people get involved in the party, like, you're all involved in the party. You watch what the politicians do. We watch what the politicians do. So, if a politician went and was completely mercenary about it and said, all right, I'm Sam Jones, I'm the current governor, and I want to run for re-election, but I have an inkling that the state convention is going to say Sam Jones can't qualify as a Republican. So then Sam Jones turns around and says, hey guys, you need to go to the convention. Well, the question is, so they show up at precincts or at county, and these people who love Sam Jones, why did they love Sam Jones? They love Sam Jones because they believed that Sam Jones was doing the right thing. What's the first thing all of you are going to do when they walk into the convention and say that Sam Jones, we love Sam Jones, and you have the voting record of why Sam Jones is doing badly? Like, that is a way that I think they would end up losing votes. Now, if they try to bribe them and pay them, I'm pretty sure that would cause other people who would oppose Sam Jones to then show up with all their people and also be saying, look at this corrupt person trying to buy off citizens. And I think that's the check there. Because right now, what goes on? Right now, you have what was passed, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, leadership committees in the state of Georgia where politicians can raise money all year for their own election. And I think it might be unlimited funds. But even if that's not the case, you have the PACs right now that do the same thing. I mean, one story that I'm very sad to report, but it's somebody that one of my friends who I very respect, who is a professor, hardcore conservative Republican professor. I asked him once how he voted in primaries, or why he voted for certain people in primaries. It's because of what he got in the mail. But think about it though. The reason why is because of the money. The people with the money already do it. The people with the money are already the ones selecting Sam Jones as governor. So if Sam Jones is, if he has the money, he's already going to be getting in there. So to try to remove them, this is the way to shift the tide, so to speak. Because right now, they're the ones in charge. And the way to get rid of that influence of money and that corporate cronyist influence is by giving the power to the people here. Because I think that a lot of these politicians, even candidates for governor, I don't think they have the numbers to do it. Like, I honestly don't. I don't think they do. I mean, you think back a few years, I don't know if you remember Tricia Pridemore running against Sue Everhart. So people do remember that.
The governor tried to stop the convention and remove Sue, and still lost, even with a bunch of people who he had given paid jobs to showing up. So it's harder to take over a state convention, and that's where I think it's very useful.
Yeah, and my name, for anybody that doesn't know me, I want you to know my name because I'm going to fight this very hardly, right?
Yeah.
Because I personally think this is a terrible idea, right? I do. I don't understand what I'm hearing you say, and I want to be very clear with everybody, right? And I agree with you on all of the principles. I went out and looked at the principles as far as what we stand for as a Republican Party. But I have three major concerns with this. Number one is I think it's fully unworkable. It's fully unworkable. Because what you're saying is the only people that you're going to actually go after are representatives that currently exist. Now let me just talk to you right now about Marjorie Taylor Greene. A lot of people right now are really angry at Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're angry at Marjorie. I've been hearing about it because they're angry at Marjorie Taylor Greene. A week before we're going into convention because she voted for legislation that they think stinks. And I get it. I understand it. It was a struggle for me. But the reality is, right, that we could go into a convention next week. Somebody could bring this up. Everybody across there is angry at her, and she could be taken off the ballot. Right? Similarly, back in 2021, when everybody was angry at Governor Kemp, and I was there was a lot of noise. People might have been willing to go up and have him taken off the ballot. And I will tell you, in both of those cases, now we don't know what's going to happen with Marjorie, right? I've talked to her. I think it's my personal opinion that she did what she thought was the right thing to do. Whether or not it's the right thing, we can debate this, right? Right? And she put an explanation out there. I think she did a poor job with how she got the details out there, right? But we'll find out whether or not the Massey rules make a difference when appropriations come along. But it wouldn't matter in this case because the convention's next week. Right? So everybody's going to make a judgment on her. Nobody's going to call Jim Jordan a liberal. They're not going to say Jim Jordan sold out because Jim Jordan has a resume. Very few people are going to say Tom Massey sold out because Tom Massey has a resume. Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't have a resume. So this is the first thing she's done for us. So people could say that she sold out and that could be an issue. So I have a problem with that. Had it happened with Kemp, I would argue with you, right, that Brian Kemp, if we took him off, people wouldn't have just voted for the Republican. We would have lost the state of Georgia. And we would have lost the state of Georgia because people that like Brian Kemp would have stuck with Brian Kemp. So I say it's unworkable. For the most part, you're saying that somebody's going to come up and make a motion. But the reality is, when they make that motion, most of the convention people, if it's for a local person, let's pick on Mike Cameron or Steve Harvey. People don't even know who he is. He's our representative. He's not theirs. So we're going to have delegates there. They're going to be voting on people that they really don't know. So that's my one issue. I don't think it's workable. My number two issue is I'm going to say my piece and then I'll leave. Okay, go ahead. One at a time.
Oh, so you're saying the issue is that it's unworkable because you think that certain Republicans would just be like the delegates would.
No, I said it's unworkable because people will not have, for the most part, people are not going to have the information that they need. They're not going to have the information that they need when they go into the convention, right? Because they're not even going to know who is up, right? They're not going to know until somebody walks up to that microphone and says, I think that this person should not be permitted to run for the Republican under the Republican Party. I got to tell you something. I read your thing, and I did a lot of research before I came in here, and I thought a lot about it. I didn't come in here without thinking about it, right? But if you came up and you put a name in front of me, and then you threw some information out there, I might say, that guy doesn't sound like a Republican, he's fun. How do I know that your view isn't biased? How do I know that what is your basis to do that? Because I have no information on that guy. The first time I ever heard of him was when you got to the mic.
So what you're describing is actually a feature, not a bug with the rule. Okay. So the point is that if you have someone get into a state convention, most of you have been to, how many of you have been to a state convention before? Yeah, so a lot of you have been there. if someone goes up to a microphone and makes a random motion, like you need to have some pre-planning and actually have people informed in order for something to pass. And if somebody got up and said something bad about the representative, someone from that area would get up and respond. I mean, there would be a debate over it. That's the point of the delegates. The delegates are the most informed people in the state about politics. And if someone tried going up and just all of a sudden saying, well, I move to remove, like, you know, Sam Jones as a Republican, and then second, they aren't just going to vote on it and pass it. The whole point is you need to have a majority of the delegates actually in favor of removing them, which would be that's a big deal, and I don't think delegates would do that.